Welcome everyone to the Reading Writing Corner. I am your host, Leanne, and if this is your first time here, pull up a seat and sit down and let us review a book. If you've been here before, welcome back. We're doing a non-spoiler part of this for Silence by Shusaku Endo. This is a standalone. Now about this book. It is about Japan and the fight for Christianity in the 17th century. What made me read this book? I love Japan and wanted to read a translated novel by a Japanese person, which I'm going to probably go out there and find more. So I can do more, so I can read more, so I can experience that literary and the fantasy and the fiction. I like translated works, okay? There's several books here that I've kept from college life that I loved reading. What can I say? Alrighty. So, 17th century Japan, two Portuguese Jesuit priests travel to a country hostile for their religion, where feudal lords force the faithful to publicly renounce their beliefs. Eventually captured and forced to watch the Japanese Christian brothers lay down their lives for their faith, the priests bear witness to unimaginable cruelties that test their own beliefs. Shusaku Endo is one of the most celebrated and well-known Japanese fiction writers of the 20th century, and Silence is widely considered to be his greatest masterpiece. So, Sebastian Rodriguez travels to Japan in order to preach to and keep the Christians there safe from being prosecuted for their faith during a time when Japan is trying to remove all traces of Christianity from their shores. A very bad time. Lots of turmoil. Lots of deaths. The setup of the characters to Christians and their motives was clear from the beginning, and to those in need, to help those in need, and to try to find a missing priest. How the characters react to the situation is how I imagine anyone would act when they have to live in fear for their lives while trying to practice something they believe is to be right. The genre is considered to be religious historical fiction. Did this live up to my expectation? Yes, for the amount of it that I read, but I did DNF it. I couldn't get into it. I couldn't finish the book. Which character did I relate to the most? No one. And I wouldn't have, because it's 17th century in Japan. I wouldn't have. Two of them were Portuguese, the rest were Japanese. Maybe believing in God would be the only thing I could relate to any of the characters for. Which secondary character stood out the most was Kichijiro, a weak man that practices Christianity but cannot stand pain and will deny the religion in order to stay safe and sound and protected. He does a lot of stuff that are frowned upon by the Christians in this, but it allows him to stay safe and protect those that he can. What was more important, the character plot? I'm not sure, but I would say the plot, because the characters are just there to explore the plot, because the plot is all about the 17th century of Japan and what was happening during that time frame and the prosecution of Christianity within Japan. I'm not sure if it had multiple voices or not, because it was written in a letter format and I had only read Sebastian Rodriguez's letters, and that did not affect my reading because it's just, I don't think really anything affects my reading. Not a lot. Not a lot of stuff affects it. So I'm going to end the non-spoiler part of this review with, should you go and read the story? Yes, if you wish to know what Japan was like in the 17th century while Christians were being prosecuted and Portuguese people were trying to spread Christianity and keep them safe and to stay alive. So if you think I deserve a like, your subscription, or a comment before you leave, go ahead and do so. Now you may leave. In this book, you meet the main characters, the side characters, and important recurring characters. However, since I DNF'd the book, I only made a small selection that was important to the story. Cristofavo Ferreira, the missing Portugal priest that was said to deny Christianity because of the torture he underwent. He went missing, and one of the goals of the story, the book, is to find him and figure out what happened. Francesco Grapp, a priest set to find Furia and spread Christianity in Japan. Sebastian Rodriguez, the main character, sending letters home to Rome to inform everyone of everything that was happening while he was in Japan and his whole journey. Kichijiro, the Japanese fisherman that was found stranded in another country and wanted to return home. He is a Christian that will deny it in order to spare himself torture and pain. I am not sure how many voices are in this story because I did not get that far. And I actually defaced it, putting down, reading how many pages one chapter was, and it was like 30 some odd pages for one chapter, and I didn't finish that chapter. I was in the middle of it, but most of it was letters about what was happening. I'm pretty sure maybe it was all Rodriguez. My favorite character was no one. My most disliked character was actually Inoue, even though I never met him. He was the one that was killing Christians. They did not deny Christianity and remained in their faith because they just wanted to stamp it out because they didn't think it was good for their country. It was told in chronological order because of the letters. It had appropriate language for the type of novel it was, and I did not know about the foreshadowing of suspense. Besides the fact that the suspense was, you've got to live, you've got to stay hidden and stay safe, and if you don't, you can get captured and tortured, and that does show a lot of suspense within it. I do not know if the background is explained enough to understand, as I could not read too far into the story. I DNF'd it about page 61, and there are like 190 some odd pages here. Yeah, I had like 191 pages to this, so I did it on 61. So you can't say I didn't read a little about a third of the book, I guess you could say. The title of the book meant people to be silent about the practice of Christianity and those around them in order to keep them from being tortured and put to death, because a lot of times they were put to death. The cover of the book is Jesus on the cross because he died for our sins, and he never gives us a hardship we cannot overcome, as well as just saying silence. So that's what it says. It says silence. At least I think it says silence. What stood out as memorable was, I didn't have anything that stood out memorable of what I read. So what I read, nothing stood out. My favorite passage from the story of what I read was, for the fact is that with neither priests nor brothers, and in the throes of a terrible persecution, the hands of the government, they secretly made their own organization for the administration of the sacraments. So they kept alive their faith. That was such an awkward way of reading. That was such an awkward sentence to read. So, yeah, I'm happy that even though they're being prosecuted and hunted down, they were able to put themselves in order to read their sacraments and keep the faith they believed in alive, even in the darkest times of their life. My favorite quote of what I read so far: someone must go to give them courage and to show that the tiny flame of faith does not die out. What I thought about the end of the book, I do not know, as I did not get through it, and I don't think I got through it the first time around because I did technically attempt to read it beforehand, and I had some some underlines in here before I had highlighters and tabs. And like I said, I at one point was counting down how many pages something had, because as you can see at the bottom here, it says that there's 32 pages to a chapter. What book did it remind me of? I cannot say because I did not finish the book. I didn't have to. This book, as you know, is a standalone. There's nothing that comes before it, nothing that comes after it. It's just a standalone masterpiece that I did not enjoy. I wrote it as a 2 only because I could not get past the writing style. It did not click for me. I didn't like the dryness of it, the letters format. I mean, it didn't affect me for the reading of the letter format. I just didn't like how dry it was. It was just a dry read. I couldn't get into it. I wish I could have, but I couldn't. So, read it for yourself. And see if it's for you. It might not be, but I would attempt it, I guess. Sorry, my eyes are watering right now. I don't know why. Okay, so if you think I deserve a like, a comment, or your lovely subscription, drop it down below. I will see you next illusion.